96 teams to go in my road to predict all 131 teams this college football off season. Guys, we're moving on now to the Texas Longhorns. When is Texas finally going to be back? Well, it may very well be this year, the second year for head coach Steve Sarkisian. And this Texas team, after, again, another disappointing season in 2021, they have just added and added and added, and they haven't stopped adding talent. This is a very, very talented Texas team. So can Texas in 2022 really be back? Or is this going to be another year where Texas disappoints? What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate, and welcome to my channel. I'm predicting all 131 teams this college football offseason, which means I'm doing your favorite team. So go ahead, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, so you guys know when your favorite team gets uploaded. And the Texas fans, especially in this video, you guys are going to know this team a lot better than me. So if you feel like I missed something, you want to add something onto the video, whatever have you, leave it in the comment section down below, and I will be more than happy to read through them. So now let's talk about Texas in 2022, my third-ranked team in the Big 12 Conference coming in to this season. And again, a very, very poor season last year for Texas. With a loss to Kansas there as well. That was Kansas's only second win of the year last season. So Texas definitely has got some work to do if they want to get up. But again, like I said, the talent that has come in is crazy. Some of the stats from last year, though, for the Texas Longhorns: 424 yards per game and 35 points per game on the offensive end. On the defensive end, this is where you'd like to see a little bit more improvement: 425 yards per game with around 31 points per game. So Steve Sarkisian already bringing that offensive mindset into this Texas program. Meanwhile, on the defensive end, you would definitely like to see that defense get better in 2022. Texas, however, like I've said, while they may be adding a lot of talent under Steve Sarkisian, which we'll get to talking about here in a little bit, they definitely did lose a lot of key pieces as well, including quarterback Casey Thompson, who had 2,113 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions last year for this Texas team. And he was going to figure to be the quarterback coming in to start 2022. And he has since transferred over to Nebraska, where Marcus Washington has also followed him, a wide receiver. Also, Joshua Moore, another wide receiver, leaving this program there as well as the tight end Jared Wiley. Although that's not as big as a loss as some of the other names I've already mentioned. Other than that, guys, defensive players: Ray Thornton, Ben Davis, B.J. Foster, who had 3 interceptions last year. That led the team. Brendan Schooler, Chris Adamora, lots of other talent leaving that defensive back 7 for Texas. So this is definitely a team that, again, is looking to improve. And I think, in my opinion, when you look at the talent at the bottom of the screen, I think has added too much to not get better this season in 2022. I mean, really, just look at all the names down there that are at the bottom of the screen. I mean, Quinn Ewers, a guy who originally was committed to Texas, transferred over to Ohio State, and now is back in a Texas Longhorn uniform, and he figures to be that starting quarterback in 2022 with Hudson Card following behind him there. So Quinn Ewers, this is his time, right? This is his time to shine. What is Quinn Ewers going to do as the starting quarterback of the Texas Longhorns? Behind him, though, in the backfield, you have one of the best running backs in the entire nation in Bijan Robinson. 1,127 yards and 11 touchdowns this year for Bijan. I think he's due for around a 1,400-yard season. I think Bijan is going to have a really, really good year. And he was also their third leading receiver out of the backfield, 295 yards and 4 touchdowns for Bijan. So pretty good stuff working for Texas in that regards. Meanwhile, Roshan Johnson coming back as well, was the second leading rusher on this team with around 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. When you look at the wide receiver group, massive amounts of talent have been added from the portal, but you get Xavier Worthy, who was your lead receiver with almost 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns last year. Jordan Whittington, your second leading target, coming back as well. But also lots of talent in from the transfer portal. Isaiah Nayer over from Wyoming. Ajayi Hall over from Alabama. Jaleel Billingsley over from Alabama as well. All 3 of those guys are going to play massive, massive roles on this Texas offense in 2022. And then when you look on the defensive side of the ball, you got guys like Alfred Collins, Keandre Coburn, highlighting the defensive line. Your two leading tacklers, Demarion Overshone and Luke Brockermeyer, are coming back, as well as some really good defensive backs, such as Deshaun Jameson, 50 tackles last year, Terrence Brooks, and then Ryan Watts, who's a transfer over from Ohio State. So this is a very, very loaded Texas team. And again, Texas seemingly has added too much to where it seems highly unlikely that Texas does not get better and does not start to climb that mountain back up towards where Texas usually is towards the top of college football. They haven't been that way in very long. This is a roster that absolutely can change that. A look at the Texas schedule in 2022, and there's a big game on the schedule. There's a very big game, very marquee matchup, but Texas gets Bama at home, so that helps Texas' case a little bit. But Bama, a team that pretty much everyone has in their top two. Pretty much everyone has in their top two. So, and I mean, how can't you? Look at the Bama team. You're returning Bryce Young, lots of talent at running back with Jahmyr Gibbs coming over. Lots of defensive talent. You probably have the best player in the country and one of the best players in a very long time in Will Anderson as a pass rusher. This Bama team is just loaded, and it's going to be a very interesting test to see kind of where this Texas team is at. Also going to be homecoming for Steve Sarkisian, as he was a former OC at the University of Alabama. Other non-conference games against ULM, UTSA. Watch out for the Roadrunners. And when you look at the conference slate, road games against Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and Kansas. And then you got home games against West Virginia, Iowa State, TCU, and Baylor, with that neutral site game in Dallas, the Red River rivalry against the Oklahoma Sooners. So let's do a deep dive on some of the more games. I've already kind of talked about that Bama game. Again, Bama's just loaded with talent. Yeah, Texas gets them at home, and this is the Texas roster that's much improved, even featuring some former Alabama players in Hall and Billingsley that are going to be catching passes against an Alabama defense that also figures to be really good. So I can't wait for that matchup. I think that game is going to be a lot of fun. But also watch out for UTSA. They're getting Traylon Smith over from Arkansas, and they're bringing back a lot of their top-notch talent from a season ago as well. That team was pretty good last year in UTSA, a team that I liked a lot. So for UTSA, for this game against Texas, not going to be a pushover by any means, but again, Texas still should have the edge when you look at conference play. Of course, games that are going to stand out to you on the road against Oklahoma State. I think that's going to be a fascinating matchup. What should be a high-powered offense in Texas versus usually a really good defense in Oklahoma State, albeit they're losing their defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles. Still going to be interesting. Kansas State figures to be interesting on the road as well. When you look on the road against Texas Tech, if that offense can get going earlier in the season with Zach Kittley, of course, former offensive coordinator at Western Kentucky, that can be an upset bid game there as well. Even on the road at Kansas. Now, I know this Texas team lost to Kansas last year, and this Texas team probably has a lot more talent than Kansas does, but this is a lot more of a talented team than Kansas has been in so many years. So watch out for that Kansas team. But the game that is eyeing me, though, is that game at home against Baylor on Black Friday to end out the season, because that game right there very well could decide which one of those two teams will play for the Big 12 title. I don't do game-by-game predictions. I do more percentage-based outlook to help me predict a team's record. So if the game's in red, you're probably not going to win. If the game is in orange, hey, you're still probably not going to win, but it is college football and upsets can happen. Yellow are your 50-50 or upset potential games. Games in yellow-green are games that you should probably win, but watch out for the team on the other side of the ball. And games in green are games that you're pretty much good to book it as a win. So again, I say watch out for Kansas, but I think Texas is going to avenge their loss from last year, be able to win that. Same thing with ULM. Not a bad football team by any stretch, but they're definitely not a great football team, and Texas should be able to win, definitely have more talent. I think they'll be able to beat UTSA, but again, watch out for the Roadrunners. And then Alabama. You guys know I have Bama going undefeated if you've been on this channel. Spoiler alert, I apologize if you haven't seen my Bama video yet, but for the Alabama Crimson Tide, I think that's going to be one of the best two teams in the nation this year, And Texas, I think, is going to have a little bit of a hard time with them. Wouldn't surprise me to see Bama win that game by 20-plus points, as we've seen Bama do so many times before. But when you get into conference play, things get interesting because Texas, while this is going to be a much improved team, I definitely could see Texas losing a game much like last year where they necessarily shouldn't lose. And I'm thinking maybe on the road against Texas Tech, that could be a game where they trip up. Maybe Iowa State, West Virginia, or TCU gets them at home. Maybe they go on the road to Kansas State and get upset there. Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Baylor, I think are going to be the main competitors with Texas to push for a spot in the Big 12 title game. However, for this Texas team, I don't know if I necessarily look at this Texas roster, look at the rest of the schools in the Big 12, and think conference championship. Now, is it in the realm of possibility? Yes, absolutely. But take a look at the schedule. I mean, Oklahoma, that's a team that is always going to be at the top of their game, bringing in Brent Venables over from Clemson, the old defensive coordinator there, going to be the head coach of Oklahoma. I think the Red River rivalry didn't let us down last year, and I think this year it has even higher stakes. Oklahoma State there as well on the road. I think that is going to be a very, very interesting game to watch there and see how Oklahoma State's defense does against, again, what could be a very explosive Texas offense. But the game that is eyeing me, and I know I've said this already, but the game that I just keep looking at is that game against Baylor at the end of the season, because that game right there could very well determine which of these two teams make the Big 12 championship game. And right now, I am going to favor Baylor in that game. So I have Texas going 8-4 in 2022, but not a bad season for Texas by all means. I could absolutely see this team in the Big 12 championship. I think they're going to be around the 8-4, 9-3 type range. But again, that loss to Baylor at the end of the year, I think, is going to keep them out of the Big 12 championship game. When you look at the record projection overall, again, 6-6, I think it's just an absolute worst case. I think the worst case, realistically, for Texas is probably 7-5. But if you want to stretch that out a little bit, 6-6 is there on the table. But this Texas team, when you look at the talent, if Quinn Ewers can really prove himself, if Bijan Robinson has an explosive year, if Roshan Johnson's a pretty solid backup like he was last year as well as the guys like Nair, Hall, Worthy, Billingsley, Whittington, they all have stellar seasons, and this Texas offense just starts firing on all cylinders. This can be one of the best offenses in the nation. It definitely has the talent to. I think a lot rides on this defense as well, where you kind of want to see that side of the ball get better and improve. And I think Texas is going to play in a lot of shootouts this year, but I think their defense, while I think it's going to get better this year, I don't know that I'd necessarily look at this team and think Big 12 championship quite yet. But 8-4, I have for Texas in 2022. Texas, give them a couple years. I think they're going to be right back contending for a Big 12 title, and I think it's absolutely on the table in 2022. Let me know what you guys think about this team in the comment section below, and be sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell, share the video, anything you can to help support the channel. And remember to play hard but tailgate harder. I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.